everyone, Sunnyfall here, and today... Oh, sorry about that, just breaking in the new format here. Usually, when I delve into a topic, I primarily use an in-universe context to try and string together the disparate aspects of characters and plots and point out the writing flaws that make that difficult to do. But the meta side of the series is also important, especially in understanding the way the series has evolved since the first arc. With that in mind, welcome to a trip through time. In this series, I'll be going through the books by release order and showing what was going on around the book's release and what that meant for the content inside. Slowly but surely, we'll be forming a timeline leading right up to the present and explaining the state of the series. I'm aware plenty of fans weren't even alive when these books started coming out, so I hope this will be interesting. And first, we get to delve into the one that started it all, Into the Wild, arriving on January 21st of 2003. At the time, no one expected it to become the massive, long-standing series it is today. When Victoria Holmes was first approached and asked to write a book about cats, it was meant to be only a single novel. However, Vicky fleshed out the world and themes significantly, and it was changed to a 6-novel series that would require more than just Vicky Holmes working on it. For this purpose, Kate Cary was hired to write the books while Vicky worked as an editor, making decisions about the world, characters, and trajectory of the stories. Both decided to take up the pseudonym Erin Hunter. And as Into the Wild was published, this was the extent of the team. There were no other authors, no team of editors. It was just Vicky thinking of ideas and Kate writing them into the story. With the casual attitude and a small team, it's no surprise that some details were glossed over or skipped. The name of the main character's clan was still up in the air for a while. Why would they be expected to delve into the eye colors of every background character, or the intricate family structures from generations before the story even begins? Even at this point in development, there was a time crunch. The Aarons were expected to produce books quickly to finish the whole arc in a timely manner, and some details not addressed in the story were deemed unimportant at the time. There's no blame here, mind you. The inconsistencies in the first arc were a product of the situation the Aarons found themselves in. But it's important to understand the product we were left with so we can separate it from the corrections proposed since, that didn't always fit with the world as Into the Wild showed it. In case you somehow weren't aware, Into the Wild is the story of Rusty, the orange kitty pet leaving his home to join ThunderClan under the leadership of Bluestar, and learning to be a warrior while multiple threats face his new home. Once he is chosen to join the clan and battled to challenger Longtail, he is introduced to several members of the clan and, soon after, the territory. 2 of the apprentices, Greypaw and Ravenpaw, quickly become his friends, but the other 2, Sandpaw and Dustpaw, are quite harsh about his kitty pet roots. Many of the warriors also share this aggression towards Firepaw, including Longtail, Darkstripe, and Tigerclaw, a strong but sharp-tongued warrior that becomes deputy partway through the book after the 2 previous deputies, Redtail and Lionheart, both die. Ravenpaw tells him this wasn't an accident, that Tigerclaw killed Redtail and always intended to become deputy. Unfortunately, this knowledge makes him a target for Tigerclaw, so he is in great danger. Firepaw also meets Yellowfang, the grumpy ex-ShadowClan medicine cat who he befriends while she is held in ThunderClan's camp as a prisoner. ShadowClan is currently under the evil Broken Star's rule, and over the course of the book we see he has driven out WindClan, made RiverClan give up their territory to him, and attacked ThunderClan to make them do the same. In the end, Firepaw and Greypaw help Ravenpaw run away to a farm with Barley and join Yellowfang in a patrol of ThunderClan and ShadowClan warriors to beat and drive out Broken Star. This is a very plot-heavy book in comparison to what readers become used to over the course of the series. But with the character and world details that are included, there are several things to note. The oddities begin in the allegiances, where several details we've become used to having aren't present. Multiple cats are just called tabbies, without any coloration details. Speckletail and Longtail are called pale tabbies, Brindleface is a pretty tabby, Running Wind is a swift tabby, but none of them are given fur colors. The great majority of cats aren't given eye colors at all. In fact, the only cats in ThunderClan with specified eye colors are Willowpelt and Frostfur, both of whom are said to have unusual blue eyes, a trait that has become far more common in the time since. Another strange anomaly is how the she-cats in this book are sometimes called queens, even if they don't nurse or have never nursed kits. Bluestar is referred to as a queen multiple times. Mousefur, One-Eye, and Dappletail were all called queens, and casual warriors Firestar was attacking were called queens too. Though appearances aren't the only lacking details. No one in this book speaks much about familial relations, who anyone's parents or even mates are, an element Vicky admits she wishes she had set in stone from the beginning. As an example, when we first see Ravenpaw and he fell off the high rock, Goldenflower rushes over to and fusses over him, calling Spotted Leaf over and begging to know if he would be alright. She is the only cat to do this, and demonstrates behavior we would usually expect from an apprentice's mother. Though nothing in the book confirms this one way or another, and much later canon confirms his mother as Robinwing instead. Of course, things like eye colors and parentage aren't necessarily deal breakers for the story. As fans, we care about these things so we can make our own expansions of the canon with stories about previous generations, or art of certain background characters that we're drawn to. But the reason they weren't mentioned is because, in the story itself, these details weren't necessary, and didn't have any noteworthy impact even on the later arcs. However, there are some stark differences from the later material that seem obvious even if you have no connection with or interest in the fandom, and that have a great effect either on the quality of the book itself or the progression of warriors as a series. Into the Wild is very centralized on ThunderClan, even more so than later in the series. Firepaw doesn't even meet the other clan's warriors on border patrols, a scene that has become commonplace in the years since. In fact, WindClan and RiverClan are so bare bones that only Tall Star, Crooked Star, and Oakheart are listed to represent the entirety of their clans. Being centered on one clan was likely a benefit during the writing of this book, so that no one had to develop dozens of cats at once, along with cultural differences. But it will be interesting to see the effect of this choice as the series goes on. One interesting thing of note on this topic is the passing phrase that ShadowClan is fierce, but WindClan is many. This seems to imply that the clans were intended to have different strengths and even sizes, an idea that slowly disappears over time. Even within ThunderClan, though, there is a distinctive small size to the clan. There are only 8 warriors at the beginning, before any deaths, while even as early as midnight the totals increased to 11, and never really went down again. The number of warriors feels especially strange when juxtaposed against the number of cats in other sections of the clan. There are 5 apprentices, more than half the total warrior count, and Greypaw mentions that even this is not as many as usual. The elders and queens come to routinely have about 1 to 3 cats at a time. In this book, however, there are 5 elders listed, 6 including Rosetail, and 4 queens. Again, significant numbers of cats. The kits aren't even listed in the allegiances, although with 4 queens, it is likely several kits were already born at this point in time. The nursery is full of intriguing differences in this book, though. When Firepaw is being shown the camp, Lionheart mentions that care of the kits is shared by all the queens. The idea of anyone other than the mother taking care of their own kits in the nursery wasn't introduced until Daisy and Ferncloud arrived, but this line implies that a different dynamic was considered at first. Kits here are also treated very differently than later in the series. They certainly aren't characters, they don't speak, only make noise, and are not given personalities, names, or even quantities. The number of kits in the nursery during this book, along with whose kits they may be, is never spoken of. They were likely just implied to be there so that the queens had a job to do, and so that the Errands had a way to make new characters later in the arc. But new characters might not have been a big priority, as the Errands at this stage seemed to purposefully keep the cast very tight. Even focusing on the especially small ThunderClan, the story focuses most of its attention on an even smaller group. The 10 characters who speak the most over the course of this book have 90% of the total lines of dialogue. As a comparison, The Sight, another opener, has that number down to 70%. Interestingly, these top 10 characters don't include cats like Darkstripe and Longtail, the cats making Firepaw's new life difficult, or Sandpaw and Dustpaw, the other apprentices and supposedly his harshest bullies, neither of whom managed to speak even 15 times over the 25 chapters. There is also a pretty significant gender divide present in this book. 35% of the characters are she-cats, which is already a bit of a problem. But those she-cats combined only get 26% of the lines in the book. Most of the warriors and apprentices are male. The only adult she-cats not in the nursery, discounting the elders, leader, and medicine cats, are the newest and youngest warriors, Willowpelt and Mousefur. This implies that most of the older she-cats have moved to the nursery, which provides some problematic implications about the intended clan culture of the time. And Sandpaw, who would eventually change her opinion of Firepaw and become his friend and then longtime mate, speaks less than even Smudge, Spotted Leaf, Darkstripe, and Broken Star. This isn't to say that Toms don't have issues too. Most of the warriors are given almost identical personalities. Strong, wise, calm, and loyal. Redtail, Lionheart, and Whitestorm all fit this model, and together they begin the stock male warrior personality that persists throughout the series. For the cats that were focused on, though, to some extent, they all gave off particular personalities and impressions, some of which I would like to note down for now so we can come back to them in later books. Spotted Leaf is a talented and firm medicine cat who seems to have some sort of bond with Bluestar, whether it's a friendship or strictly professional, and casually teases and flirts with Tigerclaw. Despite that, though, she is also called young and pretty by both Firepaw and Greatpaw, so she is likely between the two generations in age. She has no trouble taking charge, but also seems unfazed by harsh words and willing to step back and let others do what they wish. Her relationship with Firepaw is minimal. She is aware of him and gives him StarClan's message, but their interactions consist of nothing more than what is required by her duties as a medicine cat and his as an apprentice. We don't see much of Redtail, but from what we do get, he's a strong, loyal, and level-headed deputy who values each of his warriors and wants them to be safe. He is confident in his authority, but not harsh to alternate suggestions, and had a long-standing and deep relationship with Bluestar based on their mutual trust and good judgment. Redtail had explicitly been her deputy for a long time before Firepaw arrived, suggesting that he is relatively old. Speaking of old, Whitestorm. Whitestorm is not listed first in the allegiances, but he is always spoken of as an old, wise senior warrior, calm and dutiful. He uses words like youngster, a term only otherwise used by the oldest cats in the clan. It is difficult to tell his exact age in comparison to Bluestar, but he is treated as her equal in all but official rank. Greatpaw is a jokester. He teases and doesn't take others' teasing or actions very seriously. When he needs to protect someone, he deflects with a joke or directing attention to himself instead of openly defending them. All in all, he's an enthusiastic, sarcastic little best friend type. How exactly these impressions will be built on is something I'll cover in many other videos over the course of this series. But I'd like to ask that you remember them for later, because many of them will change. The lore of the world itself is also something to note. We've been made aware recently that no one at this point in time had nailed down the exact rules of the Warrior Code. Instead, it was a vague code of honor that was cited whenever a cat wanted to express something as wrong. In this book, all we learn is that loyalty to your clan is the first rule, kits must be 6 moons old to start training, the clan must be fed first, a rule that doesn't quite exist in the final version, and that medicine cats cannot have kits. A rule also not included in the final version of the Warrior Code, but instead as part of the Medicine Cat Code. This one has plenty of attention devoted to it and its consequences over the series. It's worth noting for the future that Firepaw questions their rules only once, when he asks why the clans don't just share prey and territory and stop fighting. Neither mentor gives him a straight answer. Tigerclaw gets upset that the question was even asked at all, and Lionheart redirects him by saying that they have gatherings where they meet in peace each moon. StarClan is different as well. They're far off and mystical, only accessible through vague sensations the medicine cats receive as prophecies and by watching the stars. While each star is theoretically assigned to a particular cat, there is no concept of going to look for one particular cat in StarClan. Little is known about them, in part because Firepaw has no access to them at this point. The last intriguing details are a few miscellaneous cultural things that clearly shift with time. Yellowfang, despite being a former medicine cat, was considered a suspicious ShadowClan cat and held as prisoner, rather than as a peaceful mediator. Sharing tongues, grooming each other and sharing news, was at this point a daily ritual. And taking care of cats by cleaning their dirt and taking care of their fleas was implied to only be a punishment for apprentices, rather than a usual chore as it has become. But the most interesting is the continuous pressure the warriors say they are under. ThunderClan is losing many warriors, there is never enough food, and they are under constant danger from foxes, badgers, and the other clans. There's no food shortage shown in this book, or attacking animals, but the danger from the other clans is quickly shown in the number of warriors lost in and attacks on ThunderClan across this relatively short period of time. We'll just see if that level of danger sticks around. There aren't many conclusions to draw yet. This is the first book on a journey, and as a single work of literature, independent of the rest of the series, it's a fine little story. The issues in this book specifically mostly show themselves in a lack of details and depth, but with dozens of books in front of us, the web of the world will slowly be spun. And whether it will become a pristine pattern or a crumpled mess is something we'll have to decide as we go onward, in our trip through time.